We all want love, but most of us don't want to date to get it. Because let's be honest, dating kind of sucks. But maybe it doesn't have to if we actually know what we're doing. Hi, I'm Kira Sabin, and this is Reinventing Dating, a smart and sweary podcast for all singles to learn the mindsets and skills to date with intention and confidence. Join me weekly as I break down the science and psychology behind what's working in our dating culture and what isn't. Every week, I bring a new topic, trend, skill, or mindset that can help us get out of our own way to learn how to date for relationships that we actually want. Because love isn't broken, but dating kinda is. But I'm reinventing it. Let's do this. Well, hello there, Sugar Pants, and welcome back to another episode of Reinventing Dating. I'm Kira, and we're back for our fifth week, our fifth episode in our current series of common dating questions through a modern and healthy dating perspective. A few things to keep in mind about these series. I'm going to be answering some of the very common questions that I get asked the most or that I see online. But bringing them here, I'm going to be talking about them in a more non-gender role, healthy science-backed perspective. Now, a few reminders. This is about finding a partner. This is not just about dating. I am teaching people the perspective of partnerships, not just getting a girlfriend, not just getting a boyfriend, but actually a partner. Somebody who is going all in, somebody who you want to be with long term. So if you're just casually dating, that's okay. But that's not necessarily what I'm aiming at here. I am talking to people who are looking for a partner and looking for partner behavior rather than just catching feelings. Now, absolutely no shade either way, but these things may not feel like they apply if you are just casually dating. But let's get into it. So this week I was going to be talking about who should pay on a first date. And honestly, I did not wake up and choose violence. I want to make sure I have all of the facts, all of the figures, all of the stuff in place, because I know that I'm going to get a lot of thoughts and feedback, shall we call it, on my ideas. So it's important to me to put out a really, really thorough and thoughtful podcast. So we will be doing that probably next week. But this week, I am talking about something that I think is just as important, if not even more important, which is the idea of love at first sight. Do we need it? Is it real? Is it important? Is that the only way that we can guarantee success in our relationships? You know, I have thoughts. Now, I'm going to start today off a little bit differently, reading to you a song that I believe if I actually tried, I might know all the words to. But growing up in my house, we listened to a lot of musicals, and not hit musicals like today, like Hamilton or Wicked, but it was the 70s. We listened to The Sound of Music. We listened to South Pacific, Guys and Dolls, Oklahoma, a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein, and I loved it. I loved it. And there's a song that always stuck out to me on one of these albums, and it's from South Pacific, and it's called Some Enchanted Evening. I'm just going to read you a little bit of the lyrics of Some Enchanted Evening. Some enchanted evening, you may see a stranger. You may see a stranger across a crowded room, and somehow you know even then, that somehow you'll see her again and again. Some enchanted evening, someone may be laughing. You might hear her laughing across a crowded room. The night after night, as strange as it seems, the sound of her laughter will sing in your dreams. Who can explain it? Who can tell you why? Fools give you reasons. Wise men never try. It does go on. But who knows this song or who's heard this song before? And honestly, one of my favorite 80s rom-coms, actually called Crossing to Lansing, with Amy Irving. If you've never seen it, it is delightfully 80s and fantastic, and actually has some really good learning to it. But there's this scene where this kind of interesting woman is singing directly looking into Amy Irving's eyes, like, some enchanted, like, this is gonna happen for you. Just wait for it. And I think back to the younger version of myself, the teens and the 20s version of myself, very much believing the simple concept of you will know it when you see it. You will see them across a crowded room and you will know that that is your person. You will know that is your soulmate. You will know that is the one for you, and there will be no question whatsoever. I fully fucking believed that. Hands down, 100%, no question about it. That's just what I believed, and that's what I feel like all the books I read, all of the TV shows I watched, all the movies I watched really helped me believe that too. And one of the concepts that we can kind of tie to that feeling, that some enchanted feeling or evening feeling, is the idea of love at first sight. And I think we've all heard about this concept. A lot of us have bought into this concept where you will see this person and it's like the world will fucking fade away. Everybody else turns to a blur and it's you can only see them, they can only see you, and it will just instantly develop into something beautiful and deep and last forever. I legitimately, and maybe some of you guys are like, yeah, okay, I believe that. That's totally what I'm waiting for. That's what I believe too. I just want you to know that this is not, I believed that. And I had things that kind of backed that up a little bit too as I was getting older and growing up. So when my sister went to college, Sister Sabin, as I like to call her, she's 3 years older than me, but she met her college boyfriend at homecoming weekend. Like, how rom-com is that? That I think they both went out and met and probably got drunk. I think he ended up, like, staying on her floor. Maybe that was the translation for my parents, and I have no idea. But she ended up dating a guy named Pete. They dated all through college, and 15, 16, 17-year-old me just was like, "That's probably gonna happen to me, right? I'm gonna go to college. I'm going to find somebody one night and it's just going to make sense. It's just going to make sense." And so, color me crazy that I was shocked when that didn't happen in college. And in fact, I went to a small school in Iowa where it was 2 to 1 women to men. It was actually a music school. So the statistics were not in my favor, but just because I did not end up meeting my person in college did not dissuade me from this idea. I just thought it would happen a little bit later. I then worked on cruise ships. And then in my 20s, I kind of dated. That's what I would call it. There was a lot of hanging out, there was a lot of hooking up, but I can't even tell you. I remember moments in my life with a couple of different people where I'm like, this is fucking it. The stars are aligning, like the universe is yelling at me. This person is going to be my person. I am feeling that love at first sight. I am feeling those extreme attraction and emotions and everything else. So you and I are both surprised that those did not work out because I was fucking convinced that those were going to happen. Absolutely, completely. And I was confused as fuck when they didn't. I had no idea what to do when everything that I feel like I had been taught and believed just kept not working for me. And it seemed to be working for other people. My best childhood friend in our 20s, like around 24, 25, ended up meeting her husband, who she ended up married. And that situation happened again and again and again. And my sister didn't end up meeting or marrying her college boyfriend, but she ended up marrying her high school boyfriend. So I was like, see, see, see. And then as time kept going, I'm like, is this not for me? Is everybody out there falling in love, finding their person? Am I not worthy of that? Am I not deemed lovable by the love gods? Is there something as is my weight keeping me from my one? my brain could not compute. It really could not, because I so deeply believed that I would fall in love, that I would know it when I would see it, that love conquered all, that there was a point where I just started giving up because I'm like, this hasn't happened yet. I've had multiple situations where I felt some level of love at first sight or knowing it when I saw it. And it didn't seem to be reciprocal. So I just started chalking it up to it's me, it's my weight, maybe it's my ADHD, maybe I'm doing something wrong. And most of my 30s were a wasteland. I didn't date barely at all. I had gained weight. I hadn't felt good about myself. I found out I had PCOS, and that just at least explained a few things. But I was pretty devastated because I felt like the universe was pissed at me. I felt that love, like maybe I was just going to be left out this time. And it just wasn't in the cards for me. Does anybody else feel that way, or have they felt that way? I'm talking about myself. I'm sharing this story because I think there's a lot of people who can resonate. I think that what I was taught is also what you were taught. And I think you don't listen to this podcast until you lets you know I'm going to go, it turns out that was total bullshit. And here is why. So one of the things I like to do every week on this podcast is if I'm talking about a concept or an idea, is to give it a definition that we could all agree on so that as I break it down, we fully understand where I'm coming from. So I just looked up love at first sight online and said, how do we define this? So love at first sight means that you feel an instant connection to another person. Now, in an article, which I will of course be sharing, some people describe this as fireworks. Others describe it as moments where nothing else matters around you when you see and talk to each other for the first time. It's that feeling that you get when you don't want a moment to end because you feel a connection with another person that maybe you haven't felt before. And then for me, it also sometimes felt like I'd known them forever. We just started talking. We had so much in common. We instantly were laughing about the same things, maybe liked the same bands or movies or disliked a thing that everybody else liked. And that was, to me, what love at first sight felt like. So that's what we believe. So here are some myths about love at first sight that I found in an article that I'm going to riff on. Number one thing that we believe about love at first sight is that it's destiny. It's destiny, it's kismet, it's serendipity, that this was meant to be. And I will out myself right now that there is no other type of romance movie I love more than like a kismet, fate, serendipity movie, including the movie Serendipity. Because I also love me some John Cusack, especially 80s John Cusack. But I love, and who else here does, this idea that someone has been chosen for us, that someone has been chosen by somebody bigger than us, right? So God, universe, whatever you believe. This idea that there is one person out there, our soulmate, our twin flame. And I know that's got a lot of thoughts in conversation lately, but that we believe that love at first sight is really like showing us our destiny. And honestly, guys, that's a myth. And I want to talk briefly about this weird idea that we have about love. One of the things that I think keeps us stuck, keeps us single, or keeps us unhappy in the dating and relationships we are in is that we treat love very much like magic. Like it's mystical, it's confusing, it doesn't make sense. We don't really understand why our heart wants what our heart wants. But like love just knows. Love is supposedly wiser than we are. Our body knows more than our brain. Actually, that's not true. And the minute that we make something magical or mystical, or say, it doesn't make sense, it's confusing, we give our power away. We don't make logical and rational decisions. We don't move forward with people who are a good match for us. And in fact, I've been wanting to discuss this, but this is a tender topic, the idea of twin flames and kind of the twin flame universe. And I'm referring right now to the documentaries that have come out about the twin flames universe, about this couple who I believe live in Michigan and who are on some level preying on single people and their hopes and dreams for love and making a shit ton of money off of them. But more importantly, are manipulating them, are encouraging them to even change their sex so they can be together, which I am all for, all transgender rights, everything else. But I am not for people telling other people that they have to completely change everything about themselves to have a loving relationship. That's not real. And I don't know enough about cults. I don't know enough about the manipulative behavior that goes along with cults to say or degrade anybody in the situation. But here is one thing I will say that I have noticed from the moment that I watched that documentary. I see a lot of people who are getting taken advantage of, not even from companies or coaches or experts or anything like that, but even in relationships, in dating, being with what ends up being a narcissist or a love bomber, somebody who promised them the world and then took it away and ended up being terrible. I find a lot of people who are getting themselves in that situation believe this very magical idea of love, believe it is out of their power, believe it is out of their control, believe that the universe is going to deliver it to them. And so that we don't want to be thinking critically. One of the things about the Twin Flames universe, and I am spoiling the fuck out of it right now, so if you haven't watched it, fast forward during this very short period, is that they were encouraging them to go after the person that they deemed their twin flame, no matter what. People were getting stalking charges, people were getting arrested. Didn't matter that the people that they decided were their twin flames were in a relationship. Sometimes they were married. Sometimes they wanted nothing to do with the person. I'm going to give you a gift right now on this podcast, which is if you are pursuing something that deep down doesn't make sense in your gut, in your brain, or where else in your body, listen to that. One of the number one qualities when people are like, what should I work on to be in a relationship? Choose people who choose you back. The Twin Flames universe, this cult, it is playing on. And I also see people who are unhealthy and taking advantage of people, playing on people who think that love is out of their control, that they have to take whatever is handed to them, even if it makes sense or doesn't make sense. And I am going to be so bold to say that I think that one of the biggest problems we are having right now with dating and creating relationships are the amount of people of all genders who believe in the fairy tale, believe in the concept of love at first sight, believe that they'll know it when they see it. And they keep putting themselves in bad situation after bad situation because they're not critically thinking about, is this person actually a potentially good partner? So the next myth about love at first sight is that we believe that feeling is always mutual. Sometimes we feel such a deep connection, such a deep moment of attraction that we're like, this has to be mutual. And one of the things that in this article that I'll be referencing that the therapist was talking about is that she's seen couples in her practice who believed their meeting was love at first sight, but in working through some issues in therapy, they've come to see that it wasn't really the truth for one of them. Often that spouses went along with what seemed to make the other one feel good, but over time realized that nobody can ignore certain behaviors about their spouse. Nobody can ignore the healthy and the unhealthy. It doesn't matter. And that a lot of times the people who are screaming this mutual, like, it was love at first sight for both of us, that they're actually finding out that maybe one person felt that way, but the other person didn't. And I can tell you, as silly as this maybe makes me sound, a younger version of myself, I definitely thought that I felt love for someone who did not feel got love back. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't feel attraction. Doesn't mean that I didn't feel lust. It just means that there was not going to be a loving relationship. And I hung around for way too fucking long waiting for that person to choose me, who told me from day one that they weren't interested. That's a lot of fun, by the way. Please don't do that. The next myth about love at first sight is that if we feel this feeling, this deep connection and love right at the beginning, that feeling will last. And if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, there are many reasons why we feel this feeling. It can be attachment styles. It can be something called your imago. It can be love bombing, where the other person is telling you what you want to hear. It can be trauma bonding. There are many reasons that we might feel this deep connection, this deep, knowing that has nothing to do with love, and it certainly doesn't have to do with long-term compatibility. That's also part of just the honeymoon period. I'm going to be talking about what exactly happens in our body when we feel attracted to somebody and what it means and what we need to listen to and what we need to ignore. So those are some of the myths about love at first sight. Let's talk about some of the truths at love at first sight. This one I've been saying since 2010 because that's when the first study came out. And they measured this mostly in men, but men who believe in love at first sight are 3 times more likely to cheat on their partners. Why is that? We might be like, that's a weird statistic, but it's actually not. When we dig in, we realize it's because they are riding the emotions of lust, of sexual attraction. And once those start fading, as they will with the first stage of the relationship, they go looking for that feeling somewhere else. And in fact, in this article, they said men who consider themselves in love within minutes of meeting someone are likely to fall in love rather frequently. It is also likely that such men interpret attraction and love as more of the same thing, which they're not. And I am going to be talking about that a little bit. But we do have to understand that attraction can be part of a relationship, but there's about 6 different types of attraction. I'm not discussing that today. That's something I do with my clients. And it is not the same thing as love at all. Number 2, here's another truth about love. That butterflies and fireworks are actually more about nervous energy and even survival mode rather than love. Now I'm going to just go into the science end of this a little bit. I suggest if this is something that interests you, you can Google it. There's a lot of information. But have you ever felt, well, I like this person, but I don't really feel butterflies with them. I don't really get excited by them too much. Now, that's for possibly a lot of different reasons, but some of us are really looking for that physical response in our body, and we have to understand that sometimes our body confuses sexual attraction with survival mode. So, in other words, it appears to make us more likely to experience feelings of sexual attraction towards other people when it's just really fear or anxiety. And I'm just going to explain this a little bit. So, our instinct to connect with others when we feel threatened helps us survive. So, one of the ways that we survived as a human species is by connecting, is by creating communities with each other. Had a much better chance of survival because of it. For example, in ancient times, forming quick bonds during emergencies like crossing a dangerous bridge improved our chances of staying safe and staying alive. Now, in modern life, this instinct can cause problems, especially in relationships. For instance, if a woman has had a critical father, she might be drawn to someone who makes her feel inferior. Even if she's genuinely attracted to them in other ways, that mix of feeling inferior and attraction becomes a strong chemical reaction in her brain that she might mistake for love. I've heard people say, I'm really drawn to this person. My heart races when I'm with them. That's why for centuries, they thought that the heart had to do with love, because when they felt sexual attraction, their heart would start beating more. That's where we got the idea of the heart wants what the heart wants, which if you know anything about me, I'm going to remind everybody here right now, your heart only wants to pump blood to your organs, and you fucking want it to do just that, because that's what keeps you alive. Your heart does not want anything but that, and what you're blaming on your heart is really just usually unhealed parts of yourself that need to be healed for you to choose better. If your heart wants shit, you need to look a little bit deeper, my friends. So it's true that our hearts can race when we're joyfully excited, but our hearts can race also when we're afraid, when we're angry, when we're feeling insulted or diminished. So we have to make sure and give extra special attention to if our body is responding or not responding to somebody. Why? One of the greatest things that I want everybody to learn from this podcast is to just step back, pause, and go, okay, I'm not feeling this or I am feeling this. Why? Does it make sense? And if we know that we tend to pick people who are bad for us, bad to us, are not in a good place, then we do have to step back and look at who we're attracted to, why we're attracted to them, and if ultimately it's getting us the relationships that we want. And there's a whole science and psychology around the idea that if we grew up in a tough situation with parents who were not particularly kind, that feels familiar, and familiar has way more to do with attraction than you think it does. Now, the next truth that I'm going to share is that love at first sight, if you haven't caught that yet from what I'm saying here, is much more about immediate physical attraction than anything to do with love. So I would like to take a couple minutes and talk about attraction, because we talk about attraction a lot. Maybe we say sparks. Maybe we say in love, I'm in love with you, or I'm not in love with you, or I love you, but I'm not in love with you, or some weird ass shit like that, which doesn't ultimately make that much sense. But what does make sense is attraction and actually the science behind attraction. So one of my personal heroes in this work, just work in general, I love Dr. Barbara Fredrickson on her concepts of love. And I love Dr. Helen Fisher on her ideas behind the science of lust and attraction and all of the information behind that. I'm going to just give a very short version of it right now. So there are 3 things that make up attraction. Number 1 is lust. And that is basically just a desire for sexual gratification. Seriously, that's all it is. We want to reproduce. Our body are telling us constantly to reproduce and keep our species going. That's the hypothalamus part of the brain. And testosterone and estrogen are going to be what plays a big role on the lust part. Now, here's a little fun fact. Sexual arousal turns off the region in our brain that regulates critical thinking, self-awareness, and rational behavior. So, in short, this kind of sexual attraction can make us really dumb. That's why we do dumb things. That's why we don't think things through. If you've ever done something that you've later regretted, that's because sexual attraction and lust like this turns off that part of our brain. So we may do things that's a month from now or a year from now. Oh my God, I can't believe I did that. So by the way, those grand gestures and that embarrassing behavior that we love so much in TV and movies is actually just really about lust. And as much as we may think, ooh, cool, somebody's lusting after me, when we don't like our bodies that much, when we don't like ourselves that much, that may feel good, it just doesn't fucking mean anything. You can be sexually attracted to somebody who's a terrible human being or not a good match for you at all. It's our chemicals in our body doing things more than anything else, and it's certainly not about compatibility. So the next part is actual attraction. And it's similar but different than lust because it's about feeling drawn to someone, and often because our brains are telling us that they are rewarding to be with. So what happens is that makes that early stage of relationship, the honeymoon period, when you get past just the lust phase, really exciting and all-consuming. And that's because our dopamine is being hit. Now, the dopamine is produced by the hypothalamus. It is a particularly well-publicized player in the brain's reward pathway. And it's released when we do things that feel good to us. So in this case, those things are spending time with people we like and having sex. So all of a sudden, our dopamine levels will kick up. That will relate to our norepinephrine, which is released during attraction, and they make us feel giddy and energetic and euphoric. They can lead to a decreased appetite and even a lack of sleep, so that we actually think that falling in love means that we have insomnia and our decreased appetite, but really it's just our dopamine rewarding us for attraction, which once again is a good thing. And at that level, it's not just lust, it's wanting to actually spend time with this person. But that also doesn't mean long-term compatibility. And the third thing that we see happen in our brains is finally the attachment. And that is what keeps things going. It's not just about romance, but it's also about close bonds with families and friends and others, and hormones like oxytocin, which is my favorite. I actually have the chemical compound as a wall hanging because of that. But it's released in the brain, but not only during sex, but through breastfeeding and through childbirth. And oxytocin helps us connect. So it really releases in mothers to help us connect to our babies. But it also releases when we have sex or we're connecting with somebody else. And what's really important to remember about that is that we have to be careful of who we're connecting with, who we're attaching to. So if we're just riding out the emotions of lust or attraction, but we're spending time with somebody who isn't really a good partner, maybe not even a good person, and certainly not in a healthy place, then we are creating a chemical cocktail in our brain that is going to do us wrong. That's going to break our own heart. So all of those are the precursors or the process of bonding and creating a relationship. And in that particularly first 6 months or year. But I can't say this enough. We have to be a little bit, just the tiniest bit smarter than what our bodies have been doing for thousands of years. I am never going to ask somebody to make out with somebody that they just don't feel an attraction towards. But if you're spending time with this person and they seem like a good and kind person, I want you to step back and figure out what you don't like, what you're not attracted to. And if you know that who you're choosing or your picker's broken, we may have to look at that picker, because it very well might be attaching to what you know, what you've been in a relationship with, how you were raised, instead of actively picking someone who is a good match for you. Now, one of the things, and probably one of the toughest conversations, I don't love doing this podcast. I don't love teaching about attraction because everybody has 1,000 ideas about what attraction should be or isn't. And we make it very black and white in our brain. We're like, I'm either attracted to that person or I'm not, period. As kindly as I can say, that's not so in the but so. Our attraction can grow, especially since there's many types of attraction. There's physical, there's sexual, there's emotional, there's aesthetic. There's many kinds of attraction. And if you're only going on one of them, maybe like sexual or physical attraction, and that's the only one making your decisions, you're probably not making ultimately that great of decisions. Attraction is many, many things. And it truly deserves a little short rest in our lives to look at who we're attracted to and if it's working for us. I think I say this every week and I'm going to continue saying it. I can't believe, knowing what I know now about dating, what I know about love and relationships and the science and the psychology and the history and everything in between, how little of time, energy, and thought we put into choosing our life partner. And please don't blame yourself. That's what I was taught too. But we can do better. We can do differently. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts that we can create great relationships with another imperfect person. As long as they're willing to show up, they're willing to do the work with you, that you guys can choose each other. And there's some things in place, like similar values, similar relationship goals, wanting the same things, and being able to share your space together. Those are the things that ultimately matter. Now, let's dive in a couple of actual truths about attraction, because once again, it's not black and white. There's many reasons why we're attracted to people or not attracted to people. Maybe healthy, maybe not. But one of them is similarity attraction. Like when we go to a party and someone's wearing your favorite band's t-shirts, or they laugh at the same jokes as you. This is called similarity attraction effect, because we generally like people who are like us. That's just what it is, right? And we may find that people who aren't like us, we don't feel attracted to. But that's all it is. It's a lack of familiarity more than anything. The next truth about actual attraction. A study has found that who we find attractive is most strongly influenced by our life experiences, such as the kinds of faces that you are exposed to and the relationships that you formed. For example, if you have a positive relationship with someone, you may then subconsciously be pairing their facial characteristics with positive information. So when you see somebody who maybe looks like them, you find them more attractive as well. I absolutely can tell you that one of my favorite exes that I met when I was in high school, I really loved his eyes. He had very light blue eyes, big, long lashes, and I would find that quality so attractive in other people who looked like him or had that same characteristic, and I would give them more of a benefit of the doubt. I would maybe make assumptions about who they were because this guy was such a good guy. But that doesn't make sense, does it? But that's what our brains do when we don't put a lot of thought behind it. Number 3, the third thing about attraction. In general, we all find symmetrical faces attractive. I'm sure you've heard this before, that the more symmetrical a face is, the more in general we aesthetically find it pleasing. It's our subconscious brain tracking a better gene pool for health and reproduction. That's all it is. We see somebody who has a symmetrical face or a symmetrical body, and our subconscious brain goes, that is a good person for breeding. So let's attach to that. No, we can do better than that, can't we? Yes, when we talk about general attraction, like most people think Cindy Crawford is a beautiful woman. Many people think Brad Pitt is a good-looking man, right? When we take away all of their qualities and everything else. But that's because of symmetry more than anything else. It has nothing to do with actually who they are or what they're about. It's just all of us going, that's a good genetic match. So what have we learned? That love at first sight is actually based on lust and attraction, which has nothing to do with love, with relationships, and with long-term compatibility. So what you're feeling when you think you're feeling love at first sight is just lust or just attraction, which can be 1,000 different things. So if you go on a date with somebody, and I would say one of the growing pains that my clients have is now they have all of this knowledge on what they're looking for and who's a good match for them, and they're going on dates with people who don't. Now, sometimes I hear people go, why should I learn something if the guys I'm dating aren't willing to learn it? Because you're saving yourself from fucking pain and torture of continuing to choose people who can't show up for you. If someone says they don't feel the spark on the first date, you now can go in the back of your brain, that's interesting. That's just lust or attraction. That person has unrealistic perspectives of love and relationships. It can show a little bit of their emotional maturity or immaturity. If somebody after 1 or 2 days says, I just don't feel a spark, don't take it personally, because they're still more attached to instant sexual attraction than they are long-term compatibility. We've also learned that so much of this is about hormones and chemicals that are going off in our brain to connect for the survival of our species, and has no predictor of success. These are just chemicals that help us attach to each other, that help us procreate. But can we not all agree that we can do better than the very simple thoughts that go on our brain about attraction or choosing that we're basing on hormones and chemicals. That person who's not doing the grand gesture, that's probably going to be the healthier person. The person who's not having to like make up for something super shitty they did, that's probably the person we're looking for. Not for the person who's going to go on the roller coaster with you. That may feel fun and exciting. Let me tell you, that burns you the fuck out after a while. Your emotions and your body do not like that much stress. And if every relationship you're getting into is a roller coaster, there is healing to be done, my friends. And we've also learned that if we are deeply leaning into this idea of love at first sight, knowing right away that we are sabotaging ourselves. This is a version and form of self-sabotage. Love takes time. Relationships take even more time. You will never know on a first or second date if somebody can be great for you. You might be able to go, oh, there's some pretty glaring value differences. Oh, this person does not seem physically or emotionally available. You can find that out on a first couple of dates. But knowing if they're going to be your long-term match, you will not know. And the more and more that we believe that love is magical and mystical and doesn't make sense, the more and more we put ourselves in unsafe and unhealthy situations. I have created this podcast to help that love does make sense. Love feels good. And if it doesn't feel good, it's not love. It might be attachment. It might be relationships. It might be a lot of different things, but it's not love. Love only exists when we have a relationship that can keep creating it long term. Just because you feel it on the first night you met doesn't mean you're going to feel it the moment after that. And let me tell you, the type of people who I felt that instant attraction with, it was really based in fear. It was a lot of times I had been drinking because mama liked to drink, especially in her 20s. I was really good at it. I was basing it off of witty banter, who I could challenge and they would push back. There's nothing healthy, by the way, for all of my witty banter lovers out there. If you only feel attraction with somebody when you can tease them and they tease you back, that's fun for about a couple of weeks. That may get you some decent sex, but not much else. And the type of guys it turned out who were attracted to me, putting them down or pushing them away, these were not guys who are ready and can be in a relationship. The type of people who are attracted to that behavior were not healthy people. We can't rely on this idea of attraction or lust as being a decider on the long-term success of our relationships. So really, the only thing you're going to know right away is I'm either maybe sexually attracted to them or not in this moment, which is based on a bunch of different things. But the biggest thing I want you to take away from this podcast this week is to step back, pause, and ask yourself better questions. What am I feeling? If I'm feeling that this perfectly nice person, I'm not feeling any attraction to them, why? Is it because they're treating me well and I've never felt or I've never been treated well before, and so it feels really different and out of my comfort zone? That's worth looking into. If the only people that you feel attracted to are people who are familiar and remind you of the relationship you had with a toxic ex or even a parent, because that shit's all very real, we need to do some pausing, some stepping back, asking better questions, and possibly healing. And then most importantly, we cannot take other people who have not taken the time to understand what attraction is or what sparks or butterflies actually mean. We can't take that shit personally. If somebody has spent one day with you and says, you know what, I'm just not feeling it. Okay. You know what they know about you? Nothing. And the amount of people who give up after one bad date or a couple bad dates or one person that they like saying, hey, I don't think I'm into this, is more than I'd like to admit. Online dating in particular has led us to believe that there is unlimited choices for us out there. But all that's done is make us not get critical about who we're choosing, what we're doing, what's our role, and how to do it better. Relationships and love only happen when both people are committed. When both people are willing to look at the ebbs and flows of relationships, you won't feel deeply connected every single second of every single day. That's just what relationships are. And the sooner that we can find the magic in somebody choosing us and working through things with us, instead of this glossy, fuzzy feeling of sexual attraction or lust, then we are doing this better and the results are going to be better. And just a big old reminder that if you're like, oh shit, I don't even know how to look at this, I don't even know how to work this out in my brain, this is exactly what I do. And I actually have a fantastic one-on-one day intensive for what you need for love, where we understand your attachment style, how you learn to love, your values, your deal breakers, so that we can put together a basic blueprint of what you're looking for, what you need for love, and how to find it in the real world where love exists. We can either do it in a one-day intensive or break it up over 2 half days. Either way, you will walk away smarter, more knowledgeable, and know what the fuck you are doing, which fucking feels great. All right, guys, that's it for this week. What did you learn? If you liked this, if you loved it, please make sure you subscribe. Come check out reinventingdating.com. And one huge favor, please share this with the other singles that you know, so we can all reinvent dating together. Because when we know what love is, when we know our mindsets, when we understand how we work, we understand the skills, we can get in better relationships, period. All right, guys, I will see you next week. Until then, my sugar pantses, meet love halfway.